Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending. And I do mean it. Thank you for attending Champions. And from my perspective, a champion is somebody who supports a cause. And I believe today you are supporting a cause. It's called leadership. All of you, in one way or another, are leaders. Today, we're going to investigate some of the critical components that I believe will accelerate your success. Now, I see we have a lot of people on the line, and many of which, when I had a chance to take a look at earlier as you were subscribing, I have not met. So, for those of you that I have not met, my name is Greg Nichvalodoff. I am an executive business strategist, an executive coach. I have been in the corporate offices for 25 years as a CEO, a COO, and a vice president. I have also spent in excess of 3,200 paid coaching hours working with executives, understanding what their trouble spots are, and helping them self correct and become more successful. If you need more information about me, you can go to www.inscapeconsulting.com. If at any time you need to drop me an email, there's my email address. I am also on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook and on all social media. If you just type in Inscape Consulting, you should find me there. You will also notice that I've got CBS, Fox, NBC, and ABC logos next to my picture. I was really fortunate earlier this year to have been featured by a syndicated journalist at Sprout News on leadership and executive coaching, why those two are complementary to each other. The Sprout News people were fortunate enough to have CBS, Fox, NBC, and ABC pick up that feed and have given me permission to use their logos, as I am now an authority on leadership and have been approved as an authority on leadership issues and executive coaching. So from time to time, they are, in fact, sending me emails. Sprout News is contacting me for an opinion, and then it's actually sent live to these networks. And I need to thank many of you for this because my career and my involvement in executive coaching and going into multimedia and into the media world has been really as a result of my last 11 and a half years working with many of you in the area of leadership development, executive coaching, and facilitating workshops. So thank you once again for attending. I trust this hour is going to go by rather quickly, so please take out your paper or pencil or whatever you need to write with. I would also encourage you to switch off your telephones and anything else that may be obstructing your ability to take part wholly in what we're doing this afternoon. So let's take a look at the next slide. Today we're going to be identifying and avoiding the 10 deadly sins of leadership. And this is serious material. I have taken 25, 30 years of my life and have actually reduced what I would consider the 10 most important competencies required in leadership. This also is a result of working with those executives that I had mentioned earlier, 3,200 hours worth of coaching, asking them questions. What are those blockages that you've experienced in your career? And many of them have attributed much to what we in fact are going to be talking today about. In this webinar, you're going to learn a few things, and I trust it's more than a few things, but in terms of what we're going to learn is really the competencies that when developed will leverage your skills as a leader, and why developing these competencies are so important to your success as a leader. I believe that many of you are on this call primarily because you do want to become better. And that is my call to action today for you, to make you better. So let me ask the question, what might be holding you back as a leader manager? Take your time, write it down. I want you to ponder this after we're finished the workshop. What's holding you back? What challenges are you experiencing right now, today, even just prior to my call? Have you tried making changes on your own? And I ask this not glibly, but realistically. What have you done to change the way you do business from how you did it last month, 6 months ago, or 1 year? And then the last question I have you been happy with your results? Now, I see some people participating in this and saying, no, could be better. And I totally agree. Leadership is a lifelong journey. It's not so much the destiny, it's the journey. And part of this means that we have to improve in our leadership skills on a daily basis. And today I'm going to take you through some of those steps that only if you take one or two things back and become really good at it will accelerate your career, your income earning ability, and likely progression through your organization. So let's focus on your future success. And let's start removing those obstacles that are in your way, because it is that we actually take a look at these obstacles so we can find a way to get over them, through them, or around them. And today we're going to spend some time really talking about number one deadly sin is you don't know yourself. Now, sure, it sounds like psychobabble. I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but I do know one thing for real is when I have talked with individuals, when I have been coaching and facilitating, many of them are really, in my opinion, self-unaware. So what is self-awareness? How self-aware are you? How do we become self-aware? I see many comments coming in. Yes, totally. I believe you. Yeah, you looking at performance reviews. That's absolutely correct. There are some other ways that I believe we should spend a little bit of time focusing. By no means do I have enough time to actually complete the entire realm of this area of self-awareness, but let's start out with one. Some of you have mentioned feedback. Absolutely. Feedback is a critical component for your ability to become better. And how often do we ask others for feedback on our leadership style? And I believe it's not often enough. And even when we do, we typically get the pat answer of, you're doing just fine. I want you to change that dialogue just a tiny bit now. When you ask for feedback and somebody gives you the pat answer, I would inquire a little bit deeper by asking, if I was to change by 10% in a specific area, what would that be? And you'll find that you will actually engage in a different conversation totally, because people, when they know it's incremental change that you're looking for, will more than likely help you out. I have found this in my personal career. I have found it with others who've actually asked and have gone a little bit below the surface to start a conversation around feedback. There are other ways of doing it, and one of them is psychometric testing. Now, many of you may have had the opportunity to take a look at doing personality profiles. I've listed 6 here that I'm aware of that I believe I have used, all of them. The MBTI is a Myers-Briggs type indicator that takes a look at your own social style. Insights is another one. DISC, which is DISC. Korn Ferry has one that's called the 40 Executive Assessment. There's another one out there called Colors. And there's another company called Lumina that has an excellent self-assessment and reporting document that I believe is actually also very good. I specifically spend most of my time with something that has been tried and true and tested, and that's the MBTI. It's been around for 40 years. Many of the major organizations I work with have had experiences with MBTI, are very, very thankful they have. I'll be making an offer at the end of the program for you to take part in your own complimentary MBTI and assessment. But if you have access to any of these assessments within your organization, I would encourage you to take them, take a look at it, and then start making some incremental changes of becoming better. Um, Another important component of our ability to lead others is the ability to understand our emotional intelligence. And there are EQ assessments that are available that allow you to measure how you perceive emotions, how you reason with your emotions, and how you understand your emotions. Where are they coming from? What are the trigger points? So that you can actually manage emotions. And this is measurable. There's several assessments that are out there. I don't have time to go through all of them, but if you check with your HR department, they will have access in most cases to these. There are reports, and I have seen articles from both Harvard, Wharton, actually from Ivy, explaining the importance of EQ. At one point, it was IQ, your intelligence quotient. It's now becoming important to understand that we have an EQ, which is an emotional quotient. There are articles that have written the current reality around progression as an employee or as a leader is that 60 to 70% of your success is predicated on your technical skills, the remainder being anywhere from 30 to 50% in some subscriptions that I participate in, are saying that that percentage is your EQ ability. So if you stop and think about it, it's almost like a 50-50 split of how good you are in terms of technically, but are you aware that EQ is also a fairly significant measurement of your ability to work with others and to succeed? So I'm going to throw that out to you in terms of just some moments to think about in terms of how can I best improve myself with the assessments that are readily available to me. Why this is important as a leader is because I truly believe you have to learn how to lead yourself first. And that is establishing how others might be seeing you. Our perception of self in most cases is different than how other people perceive us. Because if you can't lead self, it's becoming more and more obvious that those that can't have a difficult time leading their teams. And if you're not leading your teams, then you're going to have some difficulty moving up through the organization. Because the next step is how well do I know myself so that I can interact and lead my team, which can then allow me more opportunity within my organization. So you will be receiving the slide deck. So there's no point on trying to draw this diagram. You will receive it. But I think it's important for you to review it once you receive the slide deck and ask yourself those questions around my will, my abilities, and my intuition in terms of how well do I know myself and how well do I lead myself. Deadly sin number 2 is you failed to build trust. Ever feel like that in your organization where you're working with individuals, but it just seems like they're not even part of your life because they've lost their trust from your perspective? How important is trust to you in the workplace on a scale of 1 to 10? I see numbers up on the screen here, anywhere from 7 to 10. Yes, trust is an important component in terms of your ability to lead. And it's important to start understanding that trust is foundational to your success as a leader. I have borrowed a diagram from Patrick Lencioni in his book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And I really can't underscore how important this is that many times I have been asked by organizations to come in and help them improve their results because they have tried and they have been unable to do so, at least with any sustainable measure over time. And there's enough research that's out there to really support the notion that it's not the problem with results. It's further down in the organization. And in Lencioni's mind, and mine also, is it's trust. Is have you developed the trust within your organization so that you can have conflict? trust in such a way that conflict is not me or you, or that you're bad and I'm good. It's really around ideological and philosophical differences. It's a substantial change from what most people think conflict is. Because when I raise the question, when I facilitate, how often do we go into conflict as a team or as an organization? Very few hands go up. And when I ask for a definition of conflict, it always becomes, it's one of those things where you point fingers at somebody else only to find others pointing at you. That is not what this is all about. Out of conflict, ideological and philosophical conflict, comes innovation and creation or creativity, and that is paramount to your success in this society of ours and in the competition that's out there that's driving our business. Because if we can agree and commit to ideological and philosophical differences and then say, let's just give it a try for the next 90 or 120 days, that's when accountability kicks in. Because without commitment, you can't have accountability. When I'm held accountable and you are held accountable, that's when results happen. So once again, you need to have trust as a foundation. Conflict is a good thing. Commitment is necessary, as is accountability. I find that in my travels, in my executive coaching, accountability is something that many companies don't deliberately tackle in a way that is meaningful so that they have sustainable results. I ask you the question is, how well are you at accountability? Once again, trust is one of these things that people will either tell me, Greg, I don't give people trust until they earn it. I'm an advocate of, I'm going to give the trust away and have people slowly deteriorate their trust on my balance sheet. So it's a cognitive leap, is that, I put faith in people's good intentions and assumptions that others will behave as desired. And if not, then it becomes performance management time. People ask me, Greg, well, yeah, I get the term trust, but how do I build it? My experience is depicted on this triangle in keeping with Lencioni's model. I believe that you need to really start learning how to develop relationships. So relationship building is key. How well do you know your people? I have worked with executives who know very little about each other. Some of them didn't even know that they enjoyed golfing and they are golf fiends themselves. It's really important to socialize both on and off the playing turf, so to speak. Once you've built healthy relationships within your organization, that's when decision making becomes easier for you. Because if you know a little bit about people, what they've accomplished, what they've done, you can start allowing them into your decision making huddles. Because I really believe that collaboration, co-creation around decision making are critical. I'll be talking about heroic leadership later on, but for the purposes of today and right now, decision making becomes so much easier when you start asking other people for their opinions. But that's hard to do if you have not developed a healthy relationship with them. When decision making is completed, the next step is execution. How well do you execute on the decisions that you make? This is one of those things that I believe as a leader, we many times fail. We have great intentions. We run up against some difficulty, and we sometimes back off, not to the degree that we probably should or would, but to step back to go forward is not a bad thing, but you need to go forward, people. It's really important that execution and make sure that people know that you as a team embrace execution, because that is when things get done in the organization. It's not on the never, never plan. It's on the today plan. And what am I doing today to make sure that our strategy is going forward? And in order for that to happen, you need both relationship and decision making backing up the execution for yourself as a leader. Deadly sin number 3, you conduct unproductive meetings. Now, I can put the you there being me, but I'm just saying to everyone that we do not conduct unproductive meetings. As a matter of fact, I'll show you some statistics that will probably shock and awe you in terms of the cost of unproductive meetings in the workplace. We all know what meetings are. So what are unproductive meetings? Define an unproductive meeting and write it down on a document in front of you and ask yourself, if this is unproductive, how productive have I been when I conduct my meetings? It's a little bit of a scorecard for yourself. The next question is, why are most meetings wasteful? Now I'm going to share with you a article that I have taken from TED, and the individual has actually written it up, and I think he's done it in a very marvelous way as far as explaining the economic impact of bad meetings. So how much time do meetings waste? On average, executives have said that they waste 40 to 50% of their hours in meetings, of which 33.91% in the right-hand corner are deemed wasteful. How many meetings do you attend in a week? Executives on average spend 23 hours per week in meetings. That's over 2 months per year wasted as a result of poor meetings. In terms of actual cost, it's estimated to waste approximately $37 billion a year in the US alone. And that's at a cost of approximately $1,000 per hour in salary costs alone. When polled, how effective are meetings? 9 out of 10 people daydream in meetings. Have you ever seen people when you're actually having a meeting that are doing the crackberry prayer where they're actually got the BlackBerry or Apple and they're actually typing away with their head down? I sometimes think they're praying that this meeting was over. But nonetheless, 20% of meetings are spent discussing irrelevant issues. 73% of employees do other work while they're in the meeting. 50% of people find meetings to be unproductive. And 75% of people have received no formal training in how to conduct a meeting. So I believe that's where the costs and the time savings is really what it's really all about. It's really around understanding, how do I conduct these meetings? Sorry about that, people. There we go. The most common complaints about meetings: 1, inconclusive, no decisions made; poor preparation; meetings are disorganized; individuals dominate; and there's no published results. Does that sound like any of the meetings you've been to? And hopefully, as of today, you'll start shifting your behaviors so that you can, in fact, fulfill your obligation to be very laser-like in the meetings that you call and chair. Now, again, Patrick Lencioni has written a book, and I'm an advocate of that book too, as a result of a significant amount of research into inefficiencies around meetings, because I experienced this dialogue with, I would say, 80% of the individuals, especially the executives that I coach, is the ineffectiveness of meetings. Patrick Lencioni makes a startling revelation in terms of what he has found in his journeys as a researcher. And what we fail to understand, according to him, is that most meetings, we try to jam both the informational, the tactical, and the strategic into one meeting. His opinion is the fact that we should separate our meetings so that they are either informational, tactical, or strategic. If we stop and think about that for a minute, it really starts making sense. If things are informational in terms of what's on the agenda for meetings, do we really need to have I guess, the numbers of people that we have at meetings? Might it not be better just to send out an email Furthermore, if we're having a tactical meeting, how important is it to have people that really will not be involved in the execution of the strategy, let alone being at the strategic meetings? So I would encourage you to ask yourself when you start looking at your agenda, once it's completed, and ask yourself, how much of this is informational? How much of this is tactical? And how much of it is strategic? And then decide who to invite so that you can get the highest and best use out of the time of the people that are going to attend. Think about it. We have practiced this with many of my clients over the last probably 5-6 years, and all of them have reported greater efficiencies. Meetings become shorter and more effective, and thereby saving the organization a significant amount of time and money. Certainly worth something for you to consider. Deadly sin number 4 is you execute strategy poorly. And I'm as guilty as anybody else. When I go back and take a look in retrospect, how well I did in executing strategy, I did not do a good job. Certainly, I modified my behaviors over time. I'm asking you to really start looking at, hey, there is a process. I tried to create my own process, but there are processes out there, and I'm about to share one with you that I have found invaluable in my consulting practice over the last 11 and a half years. So what does poor execution look like? And in all probability, what you're writing down right now is that things don't get done, or things are late, or people are confused. And you're 100% correct. Where does it often show up? And frankly, it's in our day-to-day operations. It does not have to be some gigantic project that you're working on. It's that if we actually stop for a moment and ask ourselves, how well are we executing on our goals, on our targets, even on our mission, vision, and values? You'd be surprised how many people go, I don't think we're even showing up there in terms of being strategic in what we're doing. I'll be sharing this with you as far as electronic copy, but I think it's important for all of us to look at a execution process that I believe Arthur Thompson and Strickland have done a phenomenal job in actually breaking apart what strategy is all about. And it's an 8-step process, and for the purposes of today, I do not have the time to go through them all. But it's important to understand that you need to start adopting or finding a strategy execution process that carries you through the process effectively, efficiently, over time. Deadly sin number 5, you avoid conflict in terms of having difficult conversations. What is a difficult conversation for you? People are saying performance reviews, issues at work, bad performance. Absolutely. Ask yourself, how often do I entertain the reasonableness of going into a difficult conversation? How prepared am I? And what is the outcome that I really want to accomplish? So the question is, what makes them so difficult? It's the emotional component to having to discuss something that may impact another human being. We do not know how other people will take feedback or criticism or even comment about work in terms of their fulfillment of it. So we need to start looking at models and ways to start looking at becoming more effective as leaders. And I know I put this in here, how do you deal with them? Many of them avoid. Avoid comes up, yes, it's starting to come up here. They avoid them. And when you avoid them, all you're doing is making the situation more inflammatory over time. The sooner you deal with conflict, the sooner you can come to resolution. So what do you think is the root cause of misunderstandings? And these lead to conflict. Secondly, what's the cost of these misunderstandings? Yes, engagement. Thank you for that comment. Absolutely. The cost of disengagement is horrific in the workplace. If you've not had a chance to do any, looking at any articles, I've got a blog that deals with this on my blog site on inscapeconsulting.com, and it's into the thousands of dollars that disengagement affects organizations. I'm going to share with you what I believe is what's referred to as the ladder of inference of how we actually end up in conflict or difficult situations. This is a human characteristic that we all have, and until we understand we have it, it's kind of hard to break it. So let's take a look at rung number one. We observe data and experiences as though a videotape would. We select data from what we observe. This is where we run into danger. We start making assumptions based on the meanings that I have added, not the reality, but what I have added. I then draw conclusions. I adopt my beliefs about the world based on my conclusions, and then I take actions based on my beliefs. And you can see what happens when that happens. We end up making assumptions and creating a mess out of our conversations. So now let's take a look at this from another perspective. Conflict and difficult conversations are typically a result of our own observations. And from those observations, we in fact draw abstractions. So there is a process by which I would recommend we take a look at your own reasoning, your own thinking, your own perspective of what I refer to as inquiry. What am I doing that's getting me sometimes into trouble, let alone how am I thinking and reasoning how the other person is behaving? And then jump up into advocacy. Is how is your thinking and reasoning more visible to others? Are you sharing with them what you're experiencing, how you are seeing things? Are you seeking clarity? If you're not, it's time to reevaluate, step back, and start looking at, do I challenge my own thinking and reasoning? And am I making that more visible to others? And then the last one is really, become more aware of my own thinking and reasoning. And that's reflecting. And reflection means that after coming away from a discussion that maybe have been difficult, is ask yourself, how well did I do? What were some of the things that I would repeat again because they were done so effectively? And what are those things that, next time I'm going to change my wording because I could tell the other person was upset? So it becomes a trial and error process, but it's fundamentally built on inquiry, advocacy, and reflection. So let's use one as an example. Here's an observation that let's say that I've made. The meeting was set for 9 a.m. John came in at 9:30 with no explanation. I can draw the assumption that John knew when the meeting was starting and he deliberately came late. I'll put my meaning to this and say, you know what? John always comes late. And my abstraction then, in terms of John is concerned, on a go-forward basis, is I can't count on John. He's unreliable. We do this in a nanosecond. It doesn't take as long as it did for me to actually recite the wording here. We do this in a split second. So once again, your observation and abstraction, you need to look at, why am I thinking this? I should be seeking more clarity. Deadly sin number 6, try not to be a hero. So describe a hero to me. Yes, Superman. Yep. Spider-Man. John Wayne. You got it. These are all heroes. And in their day and age, yeah, sure. I mean, yes, they are heroes. But is there room in the organization for leaders who are heroes? And that's what I'm sort of the crux of this entire reason that I've inserted it here is, what is the danger of being a heroic leader in the workplace? Fundamentally, it's become abundantly clear to me that those that try to become heroic leaders are the ones that are bogged down the most with people sending emails and lining up outside their office doors for insight and for assistance. If you've developed a heroic leader mindset, that means you enjoy writing prescriptions to make things go away in your organization as far as problems, and people have become dependent on you. I'd rather have employees and reports interdependent so that we can both sort out the issues. Heroic leadership is dangerous from the aspect of we all are rather time starved. And we still have a propensity to want to fix things. So you need to start looking at the balance. There are times, absolutely, where you need to make a decision and you need to do what has to get done. Most of the time, though, that's not the case. So what are your options to becoming a heroic leader? And that's being a leader who, and I'm just going to jump right to the top, what's referred to as a level 5 executive who builds enduring greatness through a paradoxical blend of personal humility and professional will. Professional humility or personal humility is the fact that, you know what, I can answer these questions. I'd love to answer these and solve these problems, but I'm not going to. I have the professional will to actually coach you through the process so that there is no dependency on me. I am not going to take the credit for the success and the outcomes. So it becomes a paradoxical in a way, in the sense that most of us would rather say that, look what I've accomplished. And I hear this all the time. There's a thing called I-itis, where leaders saying, I did this, I did that. Well, yes, you did. But is that personal humility? What do your reports think when they hear that? So skills and abilities required in today's leaders is quite different than what they were maybe 15 or 20 years ago. There is a transformation that's happening in terms of our expectations of leaders. And I'm not going to recite everything that's here, but it's important to know that we need to slow it down and become more professional and not provide answers all the time, which would include then having honest conversations, communicating effectively, having healthy conflict, as we talked about earlier. And the second and last one, and that is team building, I believe is critical. As you probably know, nothing gets done unless we can get it all done. So some things to think about. When you receive the slide deck, take a look at that and start checking these off and saying, on a scale of 1 to 10, how am I on any one of these competencies? And let that be a bit of a learning for you. Number 7 is you struggle with decisions. Every day, you're interrupted with decision-making possibilities, challenges, opportunities. And every day you may be scratching your head going, jeepers, I just can't believe this. I'm overwhelmed. And eventually, when your emotions start running and playing havoc with you, you start making decisions, quite frankly, with your gut. We've all done it. Good decisions are a result of, again, templates or technical tools for making conscious decisions. Not that I'm asking or telling you that you're making subconscious decisions, but sometimes we do them as a result of emotions, and we need to separate the emotions from the linearity. So develop and understand that there are actually formal decision-making tools available. And once again, here are some tools that I have used over the many years, and that I have found rather, and that I find useful based on the claims of others that I have worked with in terms of their ability to make hard-nosed decisions based on fact. And they are force field analysis, prioritization matrices, idea storming, Some of you may say brainstorming, same thing. Root cause analysis, and 2x2 matrix. If you are not familiar with any of these, please Google them and start applying some of these. You don't have to be a master at all of them. Find one that suits you, that you can do consistently over and over, and see if your outcomes become different. And see if it takes less time when you actually use a formal matrix of some form to assist you. Deadly sin number 8, you are unable to manage and lead change. And there's something that's constant in our society, in our workplace, and that is change. Change and ambiguity. If you haven't experienced it, please send me an email. I don't know how you could have missed it. Take a look around you. There is change happening all the time. So what is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word change? Somebody writes pain. Yes, there is pain involved in change because we need to start doing things differently. And when we do, it is painful. We embrace those things from the past and it's hard to give them up. The brutal fact is that about 70% of all change initiatives fail. Harvard's done significant amount of research, and there's many contributing editors and authors and really reporting that a vast majority of change fails. Gallup, as recent as May 24th, cites the same number in their research. So is it any wonder that when we hear change in the organization, we sort of panic? Because we've had an experience where, in fact, change did not work. So I'm going to share with you some component pieces that I believe are integral to your success to decrease that 70 significantly. And that's to start understanding that there is a life cycle of change. I was fortunate enough to be asked to facilitate a discussion on complexity and change in the workplace. And through my research, I stumbled across this model that now that I've had a chance to work with it multiple times in organizational settings, I think is invaluable. And that's first to understand that there is a life cycle to change. It starts with the change plan and it ends with climb to productivity. But very seldom have I ever seen anybody take it apart as the HSHP Foundation has. And there's a link to it down below that you can actually take a look. They have probably 40 pages around change. What I am most concerned about is this area called the Valley of Despair. And this is where things, if you don't execute properly, will end up off the rails for you. It's okay to have that area called Pity City because we all go there. Is, woe unto me, this change is being done and no one asked me, or I really disagree with it. You have to make a choice at that point and say, okay, I'm going to go along with it. And this is why it's so important as a change leader, if you're in that position, that you provide training for your people to understand why we're doing it, what we're doing, how we're doing it, and by when this needs to get done in order for you to climb to productivity. Furthermore, you need to understand as a leader that your leadership team, including yourself, experiences these valleys at different times through the course of change. I have found many organizations assume that everybody experiences this change curve at exactly the same time for the same period of time, and that is not the case. And that's why it's important at this particular juncture to say that communication, communication, communication are the keys to making sure that all leaders are on the same page. And as leaders, we sometimes fail to understand that. Another matrix that I want to share with you also is if you're going through that valley of despair and you're coming out of it and you're still not experiencing the change that you desire, take a look at this matrix in terms of what is the current state of your team or of your organization or your department. On the right-hand side, you'll see change, and you'll see confusion, sabotage, anxiety, resistance, frustration, or treadmill. And ask yourself, do I have a member of my team that's in one of those stages? Or are we all in that stage? What this particular group has done, I believe, is priceless in terms of putting it all together so it becomes very easy to use. They state that the first thing that we all have to be really concise around is the vision. Why are we doing what we're doing? And then having to build consensus, and then determining whether or not we do have the skill sets to do this, and then building in incentives, making sure that we have adequate resources, both in people and in dollars to make it happen, and then having precise and concise action plans. Because when we do that in an exemplary fashion, we can create change. But along the way, there are going to be bumps and hiccups. So if you find that somebody is being resistant, go over to the right-hand side where it says change, drop down to the resistance box, and take a look in terms of, okay, if the person understands the vision, the consensus, and the skills, what are some incentives? And I'm not talking about dollars. It's how do we incentivize that individual to understand that their contribution or lack thereof is contributing to the overall success or failure of the entire plan. And then seeing whether or not they have the adequate resources to make sure it's done. And then saying, well, okay, let's build an action plan. So I trust this is useful. Please take some time when you get the slide deck to go over it in more detail. In your estimation, what is the cost of a failed change initiative? I'm dealing with a company right now that we actually did go through this entire process and have taken a look because they have attempted a change initiative. And when meeting with the CFO, the CEO, and some of the senior execs, we estimated that the cost of that particular change initiative cost $1.2 million over a period of approximately 11 months. And it's when things go off the rail that we need to start realizing desperately that we need to have a process in place. And that process is something that was just covered off on that matrix, is a definitive part of making sure that before you start moving, all of that is in place. Once again, the cost to one of the VPs actually resigned, another VP was fired. So the cost for their careers were fairly deliberate. And the cost of the company, like I mentioned, was $1.2 million. Yes, it's, we were looking at something as far as a recovery program. I believe that you can go back in many cases and salvage what appears to be a total loss. Yes, it's going to take more time and money, but it's apparently not going to be a total loss. Deadly sin number 9 is poor communication skills. This is a premise that I've adopted over the last decade that has served me extremely well, and that is to seek first to understand, then to be understood. If you have not read Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, then I would like to mandate it, if I could, tongue-in-cheek, to be one of the first books you purchase next time you're out looking for a book. It's a phenomenal book. It's been around, I don't know how many million copies that have actually been sold of this, but that one statement alone can salvage your ability to communicate more effectively in the workplace. To be a good communicator, you need to be a good listener. I also believe we were created with 2 ears and 1 mouth for that particular reason, maybe to listen more than we speak. The other one that I want to share with you is really around this social style in which we find ourselves as leaders. Is we have a natural tendency to be teleassertive, to tell people how to do things, when to do things. It really becomes one of those things that adults don't like to be told. And you may get some passive aggression, around some of the things that we ask people to do. I do believe it's a lot easier if you ask questions to get people to understand why they need to do what they have to do, rather than just pointing them in the direction and say, make it so. So learn to become more ask assertive. And this lends itself into what's referred to as leading with questions. Now, I'm not here to sell books. but I do have 2 books that I do want you to, again, put on your wish list for maybe even Christmas. And one of them is called Leading with Questions. The author is Marquardt, spelled Marquartd. And another one is called Power Questions, and it's written by Sobel, Sobel. I have probably 15 or 20 books relating to coaching, asking questions. Those two are without a doubt the 2 books that I would recommend over and over again. The minute you start shifting your behaviors by learning how to ask questions, you'll find that your results start improving, your rapport and ability to work with others improves. Become an active listener. We naturally have a tendency to listen with the only result in our minds of answering the question. So when we are talking with people, we're waiting for them to stop so we can actually finish. I think what we need to do more of is start asking clarity questions around what people are discussing or communicating with us. We fail to understand that, you know what, yes, that person may have a perspective, but we go immediately into defense mode or have to come up with a bigger, better explanation. If you're leading with questions and you become an active listener, it becomes very, very obvious to the other person that they are creating meaning and that you are seeking clarity around what they are saying. So slow it down. Become a participant in the conversation. It does not have to be a monologue. It has to be a dialogue. And with a dialogue, we need to listen. Deadly sin number 10 is you don't manage up effectively. Now, many of you, for you, I think for many of you, this is a bit of an anomaly because you feel like if I manage up, I'm manipulating. That's not true. There are several articles that if you wish, contact me at greg@inscapeconsulting.com around the science and the art of managing up. In fact, there's books that are now been published on how effective you are in terms of your trajectory up through the organization is based on your ability to manage it or to lead up. So if you're looking at developing a methodology of learning how to get through the corporate maze, then you need to start adopting some measures and some learning and some development around leading up. Here's a question for you. Ever feel that you and your supervisor are from different planets? That you communicate differently? That you don't understand why they're asking you to do the things they want you to do? So what is managing leading up? Here are 6 points that are going to point you in the right direction. Here's a checklist for managing your boss. Do you understand what his goals and objectives are? If you don't, you should. Have you ever discussed with your supervisor what his or her pressures are and see what you can do to maybe alleviating them? Are you aware of your supervisor's strengths, weaknesses, and blind spots? Find a way to help them. Every one of them has a preferred work style. Do they prefer to have meetings or emails and then meetings? Start becoming deliberate and strategic in how you interact with your supervisor. They all have different preferred communication styles. Have you stopped and watched and listened to see how your supervisor communicates and deals with others? Watch him in a meeting. Do you have expectations? Does your supervisor provide you with expectations? In all probability, 100% vote here is the answer is yes. But I am going to flip the coin a little bit here and ask you, does your boss or your supervisor know what you expect from him or her? And I'm serious. Most individuals that I have talked to and have experienced this dialogue around have said that very seldom do my people, as far as my reports or even peers, ask from me what they expect. And they're sort of, running on automatic pilot and on cruise control, not knowing. So if you have expectations, sit down and have a discussion with your supervisor. If it means more face-to-face time weekly, then ask for it. If it means that, you prefer to have an email sent with an agenda and some talking points so that you can communicate more effectively, especially if you're introverted, he or she needs to know that. The more you are in tune to the needs of your supervisor, the more promotable you become, the more you show up on their radar screen. And this is key, listeners. You need to be on that radar screen. As they are promoted, in all likelihood, so will you be. If they're not promoted, they will reach out to others that are looking for positions where maybe you can fit based on the fact that you are supporting your supervisor. So what is the value of learning to manage up? And we can put a price tag on it if you want. Is take a look at the next role in terms of the corporate ladder. What's it going to take for you to get to the next level? What about a wage increase or a performance review that now becomes optimum? We need to be mindful of the cost of not doing this. What happens when you don't manage up correctly? And in many cases, you probably feel like, I'm overlooked. I have others who leapfrog me in the organization. And if you stop and start analyzing why, many times it's not the competency, it's their ability to get along and manage their supervisors. So I'm asking you today to really stop and be reflective and ask yourself the question, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well am I managing my supervisor? And then to start looking at how can I become better at it and start adopting some methodologies around maybe that list of 6 that you'll receive and slowly start chipping away at them over time. Well, unfortunately or fortunately, I know I've spent a long time speaking with you, to you, but that's them. Those are the 10 competencies that I believe will accelerate your career. They have for the vast majority of individuals that I have worked with. These competencies are not a result of just my own experiences. It is a result of a collective from multiple people. And I can say that as many as 320 coaching clients that I have worked with over the last 11 and a half years, I've consistently asked them what competencies have they built and what are those competencies that have held them back. And as a result of that and my own input, these are the 10 competencies that have visibly risen to being priorities in everybody's career. And I'm thankful that you're here to listen because I do believe you will make a difference if you start applying them. What would it mean if you can become very proficient in all of these competencies rather over the next 10 months? What would change for you? What benefits would you personally experience? And I'd sort of touch on them briefly. One is an accelerated career path, likely better performance reviews, all of which have got dollars attached, prestige attached, success attached. I'm not here to hard sell you today. So right off the bat, many of you that know me, I am not a salesman, so I'm not about to become one, but I am prepared to work with you individually to transform your leadership skills around these 10 competencies. I have developed what's referred to as a performance accelerator program. It's a deep dive into all 10 competencies over the next 10 months. And this is what it's going to look like. The program is 10 monthly 1.5-hour webinars, which I believe are worth $2,500. I do have other webinars that I have conducted, and per seat charge is $250 per person. I'll be providing all the handouts and templates to all the participants. And in my opinion, like MasterCard, they're priceless, but I'm putting a value of $500 on them. You'll receive a recording of all 10 webinars. There's a value of $450. You'll receive an MBTI type assessment where you will actually do the assessment and receive a report. The cost of that is $275. I'll spend at least an hour and a half, and I know I have an hour here, but they sometimes take longer. And my debrief charges for them are $295. What's even more important, though, is you'll have 10 months of direct access to me by way of a secret Facebook page or a cohort page that I have set up for private members only. And I'll be monitoring it daily so that you can, in fact, ask questions. Others in the program can answer how they're doing or dealing with the situation. I will be there monitoring on a daily basis. You will also be given the opportunity for a 1-hour executive coaching session between session or webinar 8 and 10. Just a bit of a check-in to see how you're doing. And that is at my minimum price of $350. My coaching fees start at $350 and range up to $997 an hour. I'm going to treat you like I do my CEOs. The value package is $997. I'm only going to be actually attributing $350 to this coaching session. It's a bargain for you, and I would hope that you would take me up on this. So the total value in terms of the value of the package is $4,870. Today, I am making the offer available to you for 60% off for a total of $1,970 over the next 10 months. Those that have the wherewithal to pay it in one installment, obviously a savings. If you want to operate on option 2, more than happy to work with you on a monthly basis and as pay as you go at $210 plus GST or plus taxes in Canada here. The other thing I need to state right now is my workshops are all 100% unconditionally guaranteed. If at any point you feel like, you know what, I'm not really getting the value, please let me know. I will not ask questions. I will stop your monthly deduction and we'll call it a day. And I trust that in some way that I may have helped you in your career, but you're not going to offend me. I really am here to support you in your success. And if I'm not providing you with value, then you're free to go. I have yet to have anybody depart from any workshop that I have done. So please, if you're looking at developing your own leadership, developing these competencies, you owe it to at least try one session. And if you don't like it, just let me know and I'll refund your money. So if you want the program, you can find the login at that URL below, http www.inscapeconsulting.com. Don't forget the / leadership program. And I'll be more than happy to work with you. And for some reason, here we go. If there are any questions or you need some clarification, once again, you can send them to greg@inscapeconsulting.com. And if you want the program, there's the link. And I do sincerely want to thank you for giving up this time to spend with me looking at the 10 competencies. And I also want to thank you for attending. And those are the contact information if you need to contact me to further maybe have some dialogue. My number, if you need it, is on my webpage, but if you want it now it's 604-943-0800. Have a fantastic day. Have a fantastic time as a leader, and hope to see you at the webinar. Thank you. This is Greg signing off.